everybody, Floppy Waffle 69 here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be doing a full deep dive analysis into the Tier 7 Premium USN Battleship, the USS Florida. So what is the USS Florida, guys? Why would you get this ship, and why are we deciding to talk about her? I'll answer that here. First things first, the USS Florida has been in the game now for around, I want to say, 4 years, give or take, around that mark. And the reason why I'm deciding to talk about her is for two reasons. One, I was requested by a fellow sub or someone in the comments of the previous videos to do a review on the USS Florida. And if you go over to the armory here, you can see that not the Blue Archive, here we go, the, I guess, tokens that you can exchange actually for dubs here at the end. You can actually obtain the USS Florida, and I believe this was a ship that you could have traded for in the last trade-in event in the previous update. So I think it's just a good time to finally get around to talking about her and share some of my opinions about her. Is she worth it? Her play styles, and if you see her on the battlefield, kind of how to take her down. So right out the gates here, I'm going to tell you that I am not too fond of this ship, and there's multiple reasons why. Starting one is the armor. I think the armor is more like that of a heavy cruiser than it is of a battleship. And when I talk about the armor layout, you can see that, for yourself. And number two, obviously at the tier, with the armor scheme that is it, I find that I'm finding myself getting up tiered a lot in Tier 8, especially in Tier 9 games quite frequently. Back in the day, I think Tier 7 really had like the crown, that in Tier 10 for, always being up tier, or sorry, always being top tier. But now, this thing, you're getting up tiered a lot in Tier 7. So that is another big downside to why this ship struggles with that and the armor scheme. And the last thing is the guns. For a ship that's kind of sold on being this alternative sniping battleship that likes to sit, at medium to longer ranges and be able to snipe enemy ships, I find the guns incredibly unreliable at times, and incredibly inconsistent as well. And I understand that we've talked about this on this channel about inconsistency and how it's a big balancing point in this game, especially when it comes to battleships. And I'm fine with that. I understand that, every other salvo, maybe your shells will go where you want them to, and every now and then you'll have only one shell hit the target. I understand that. You have 12 guns though. 12 guns, and Wargaming likes to advertise this thing as, more of a more accurate, more reliable ship. But that's just not the case, at least in my opinion. This ship shines at one thing, actually two roles the ship has, in my opinion. One, HE spammer. All day, every day, the primary ammo type of this ship should be your high explosive shells, as they have a pretty damn good fire chance. And with 12 shells going down range, coupled with the percentage of each shell to land or to start a fire, you will actually be a little bit of a flamethrower. And number two is citadeling cruisers that are slightly angled to you. That is what this ship excels at. AP against ships that are completely angled and or flat broadside, you will get either shatters, ricochets, or over penetrations. The AP is not particularly potent at all, only when cruiser players are doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is angling, but they're a little late to the party in regards of angling and a little bit like late reaction timing. Making the threshold of the armor piercing shells, like that arming threshold, just enough where you can actually score citadel ribbons and nuke the ships. That is what in my experience, about what the Florida really excels at. Other than that, guys, it's a little bit of a yikes for me. Is she worth it? I think that's kind of a toss-up because, in my opinion, again, this is coming from someone who is a cruiser player. So not only am I looking at it as a cruiser player playing battleships, but as someone who's fighting this ship as a cruiser, same tier. I'm not scared of this thing whatsoever. And I can reliably farm her and outplay players that are playing her. Again, it comes down to the commander. We know that argument, blah, blah, and so and so. But coming to you, take that with a pinch of salt is kind of what I'm trying to say. But like we always do, we're going to delve deep into the ship, kind of talk about her, show some stats on her, show some gameplay on her, and then you at the end of this video can make the decision whether or not this ship is worth it in your books. For me, I would say it's a bit of a toss-up. Every now and then the ship decides to show up, and I get those, the the parting seas and and phenomenal dispersion and all that stuff, it works. The stars align. And other times, I would say more often than not, I'm just not getting the results that I really want to get in this ship. And that's not coming down to my builds. That's not coming down to my play style, because I have altered it to see what is the optimal play. And everything I've listed is kind of the way that I think I've gotten more consistent results in her, getting up tier and being top tier, rather than playing around with some standard tank builds and whatnot. I think this is probably the best build, that, in my opinion. Again, my opinion. If you want to disagree, hey, by all means, build the ship how you want to build it. But again, this is what I'd recommend. And again, these videos are more as showing you what these ships can do potentially, and showing you kind of what they are and how to handle them, so that you, as the player sitting there, whether or not you want to spend money or whether or not you want to go for these ships, you can make the decision on your own whether or not these ships are worth it. And a little bit of a side note, guys. Sorry, I was out of town for about 7 days or so, vacationing. So I didn't make any preemptively videos and trickle them out release, because I have a life and I don't just sit here on YouTube making videos. So sorry about that. But I am getting back around to it, and I will get videos out when I can. Been a little bit of a busy, a little bit of chaotic week, so been traveling. So anyways, let's get into the review. So first things first, like we always do, we're going to take a look at the armor scheme. And like I told you, the armor scheme isn't anything to write home about. You're going to have that 25mm nose, a 37mm deck, not even 38, with a 25mm ass. Again, your upper belt looking at 26mm, and then your side belt or side plating is coming in at 285. Again, massive citadel. You have to use caution, because this ship is not particularly hard to citadel and will get blapped out of the map, especially through the nose. As you can see, that you're really not having to pen much. 25mm schnoz going right into about a 282mm. So realistically, what, you're just at 300. Not hard to do, especially when 406s and 410s are in the mix now. So keep that in mind. Going to the survivability of the USS Florida. And again, I want to just make sure that all my numbers are correct, because I obviously saw signal flags, for fuck's sakes. I forgot to take those off. 51,800. Again, you're kind of, what is this? Is this the lowest of all ships? Yeah, this is the lowest of all ships at Tier 7. So you have the lowest HP pool. Again, another big downside, in my opinion, for a battleship. And also, on a side note, you do have one less heal. I think you only have a base of 3, not a base of 4. So again, you're going to have to pan that, like, in your think about that when you're playing the ship, that you don't have that safety net. So, but it does look as if I'm not mistaken, you do have the improved US 14% heal. Yeah, like pretty standardized. And again, with the damage control party, you actually have an improved 22nd, not the standard 15. So I guess there's that. I guess a little bit more like fire and submarine ping protection there. So you could consider building with the damage control mod 1 to further extend that. Again, that is something you could play around with and experiment. I never did. I never really found myself, the way the play style of the ship is, I never really found myself in situations where I really needed to worry about that, per se. So especially with fires where I'm playing, I didn't really find myself getting HE spammed a whole hell of a lot either, just because of where I found myself playing on the maps, or per game, right? So again, torpedo protection on this ship is clocking in at 26%. And I think that is middle of the pack, middle to high. It's around 7. Going to the artillery, I showed the gun firing angles. Not the best, especially in that number 3 turret. You're going to have to be showing a decent amount of sight. Again, with the ship that has a higher citadel sitting on the water and easier to citadel with lightly armored, you're going to have to be careful when utilizing that 3rd turret, because you will indeed show enough side to get citadel. Because more often than not, what you could kind of compare this thing to is like a North Carolina hull that's like even more lightly armored. That's kind of what I would compare it to. And everyone knows at Tier 8, the North Carolina isn't particularly well armored, so you definitely have to overcompensate and angle accordingly, because you will eat those cheeky citadels from time to time. Going into the artillery, you have 3x4 356mm guns. So these are smaller caliber guns. and they actually reload a little bit longer. Look, coming in around 32 seconds. The dispersion values on this ship, and this is kind of interesting because Wargaming considers this ship to be more of like the sniping variant, so to speak. A sigma value of 1.7 with a horizontal dispersion of 149 and 79 millimeters, or sorry, 79 meters at 12 kilometers. And when we reach our max firing range of 18.6, which isn't particularly bad, you're looking at a horizontal dispersion of 208 meters with a vertical of 125 meters. Now, how does it stack up in regards of the rest of the competition? Well, that being said, the single best dispersion when horizontally is like a four-way tie between the Florida, Heinrich, Renown, and Rook. But then the best vertical dispersion is indeed with the Florida at 125 meters. Coming in next is the Rook with 127, Heinrich with 128, and then the Renown 44 with 130. But then the Renown 44 has a 2.0 sigma. The dispersion values aren't terrible, but with the 1.7 sigma, in regards of how often your shells will go where you want them to, so to speak. That's kind of the issue I have with this ship, is your shells are very inconsistent with landing at those ranges. And even when you start to close the distance, you're thinking, hey, if I close the distance, there's a higher chance that my shells are going to go where I want them to go. Really not so, guys. You're finding yourself still only landing about 4 or 5 shells, maybe in the vicinity of where you want them to be. The rest, it's a toss-up. Really inconsistent battleship for a ship that's prided around being a consistent BB. That's kind of my main gripe. It's advertised as one thing, and for me, it really doesn't do that. Not to mention in the third slot, because it is an American battleship, you can't slot the aiming system, mod 1, so you're not getting that minus 7% better dispersion value, where all these other ships, the Rook, the Heinrich, the Renown, can all theoretically slot that. So again, you just have to ask yourself these questions about, is it really that accurate kind of thing? Is it really the guns that reliable where it says it's topping the chart on horizontal and vertical dispersion? Again, for me, no, it's not, because you're not being able to slot that mod 1, which is rather disappointing. And some other things to note about this ship, obviously your firing range is exquisite. It's up there with in the top 12, top 10 in regards of your range. I mean, there's Nagato obviously is the crown with 20.5. And Florida says it's clocked in at 12, which is 18.6. But again, the Florida does have access to that spotting aircraft to increase that by 20%. Which is super nice. Again, these shells on the Florida are a little bit more, I guess, better. They're better in regards that they are flatter arcs, and that your where is it? The flight time on the shells is not bad at all either. I think when let me go to the Florida here. When you're clocking in and looking at the Florida with your flight time, it's about 11.2 to 11.3 at max range, which is 19 kilometers, 20 kilometers around there, which is not bad, actually. It's not bad. It's kind of there in the mid to high range for the ships. The big thing that does suck, though, is that your 180-degree turn time is a standard 45 seconds, and that's why I recommend in that slot 3, because you can't slot the aiming systems mod 1. I would like to reduce that a little bit by getting that down to what I have here on screen, which is 32.6, which is more standardized, I guess, for what Wargaming likes to pump out nowadays, which is, again, I don't understand that, but whatever, Wargaming does what they want to do with battleships. And then another thing, too, with the Florida that you have to keep in mind is in the slot 4, I actually don't take the damage control or the propulsion. I take the rudder. And why do I take the rudder? Because I want to utilize, because the battleship is too inconsistent with the front 2 guns especially, so it's only 8 shells going down range. I want to make sure I'm shooting almost all 12 of my guns at the same time, especially at the longer ranges where you want to be playing this thing, so I can swivel, so I can get my, show that broadside, shoot all my guns, and then turn back in order to angle as much as possible, really increasing my armor threshold, my effective armor. That's why I recommend doing that. So I am reducing my tanking ability in order to emphasize more of an offensive capability. You could theoretically enhance that even more by taking the heavy AP and the Furious skill. For me, I don't really want to do that. To me, that's overemphasizing one play style, and some people might want to do that. For me, I don't really want to do that. I would rather play more of a standardized on how I'm listed it, how I have my ship built, as you saw with the captain build. I don't really want to go all into one thing. It doesn't really make much sense for me, especially with this ship. Um, the last value that is worth talking about when it comes to her AP shells. And we'll talk about the AP first, clocking about 9,500 AP damage with the initial shell velocity of 823 meters a second. Her AP shells are slightly floatier than her HE. HE's coming in 861 with 4750 maximum damage with a 24% fire chance on these HE shells, which is giving it about a 5 to a low 6 second or 6 fires per minute, which isn't terrible for a battleship, guys. And that is again with flags in the demolition expert skill, I believe you get it up to 24. Actually, I should probably remove this guy, send a reserve, so that we can see kind of more base stats here. Again, 59 millimeters of penetration isn't terrible at all. My problem, though, when it comes to the armor piercing, and like I mentioned earlier on in the video, the AP of this ship is very, very frustrating at times. And I was looking and I was like, well, what is this? Is it the flight time? Is it the impact speed? Is it the impact angle? Is it the penetration values? Like, what is the issue here with the ship? AP shells, and I think it has to do with the lighter weight of the shells coming at 555 kgs, mixed with that of the Krupp. This ship has, I believe, the highest Krupp value of all Tier 7 battleships. And what Krupp has to do with the shell hardness, and it's a value that is tagged into your overall like penetration, basically. I know I'm not like describing it very well. Just understand that your shells are super hard with this ship, mixed with your impact speed, which is fairly high, and your penetration, which is high. You're going to be scoring a lot more over penetrations with the ship than you want, and that's when you're only going to really see good, effective citadel damage against cruisers that are slightly angled to you, not overly angled, because you're just going to get auto ricochets. You're basically going to be punishing cruisers that are doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is angling to you. Not as basically as severe as like the Roma, and I've talked about that on previous videos, but similar to it. Which again, I think most players play battleships for multiple reasons, but one is obviously get the large damaging AP citadels and dev strikes and all that kind of stuff. And this ship is one of those that it can happen, but the right moment has to present itself. And especially at a tier where 406s and 410s, especially 380s, are prominent, or like the standard go-to guns. This ship is going to be frustrating, and you have no improved ricochet angles on this thing whatsoever, and your fuse time is 0.033 seconds, which is, I guess, pretty standard for battleships at this tier. Incredibly frustrating to deal with. And you'll definitely see examples of that in the gameplay as we go ahead and show you some gameplay in it. Secondary mounts, we have the 127 millimeter guns, 4x1, 127 mounts. Again, this is mainly going to be, I think, your AA, but they do have a 2.8 second reload time. Maximum range is about like 6 kilometers, about 1,800 damage with 6% fire chance with a 21 millimeter penetration gauge. Pretty much non-existent unless for the occasional submarine surfacing next to you or a destroyer trying to YOLO you. That's kind of the only way you're really going to make use of these secondaries, and you don't really want to get into secondary range anyways. And then you have the other 127 millimeter gun mounts, which are these are your AA values. Sorry, the 6x2 127s. These are the ones that have a 5.7 second reload with 5.9, so about 6 kilometers again, 1,800, 6% fire chance, 21. So pretty much identical. They're just listed different. You have like Fletcher turrets and gearing turrets, essentially, is what you can, I guess, describe these as. So this does have the airstrike. Again, with the commander build that I had listed, I think I don't know if it's, am I buffing the ASW or just strictly the A? I had to double check on that. I couldn't really remember. But yeah, you have the airstrikes, thank God. They're not ship-based. A defense, kind of worth talking about because you do have 334 millimeters, or sorry, my God, 334 damage per second with this ship, or AA rating, continuous damage rating. And again, you have it listed in different categories here, so I'll try to go through and list all the anti-aircraft values. Your long range, which is 5.8, is 118 DPS. Medium range is 3.5, 202, and your short range is 223. So realistically, it's just going to be your medium and short range. They're going to be doing your primary damage dealers. And your flak count is 4 plus potentially the 1 if you take the captain skill, I believe. Yeah, so I think I have 5, and you could potentially get another one, maybe potentially if you take the captain skill. Not 100% sure on that one. But your maximum firing range is 5.8. And the AA skill, I mean, the AA on the ship can get, I guess, boosted with taking the defensive AA. Sorry, I forgot that I tried a different build. That build didn't work. You can get boosted with the defensive AA on the ship, which is going to obviously buff your continuous damage by 50% and your shell explosion, like your flak shell explosion, by 300%. Again, it's one of those things that's weird because I think against tier 6 aircraft carriers, you should be able to do decent. But tier 8s, you're pretty much fodder again, getting those up tier matches. The defensive A, don't rely too much on her because it's not really going to do much. Because if you're fighting against a CV commander that has hands and knows what they're doing to dodge your flak, it's really going to neuter you essentially, and your A is going to be worthless. So. Maneuverability, clocking in at 27 knots as a top speed. Your rudder shift time standard is 15.4 seconds. Of course, with that rudder mod in the 4th slot, you're clocking it down or getting it down to 12.3 seconds. And again, you have a turning circle radius, which is 760 meters, which I believe it's kind of middle of the pack. I mean, the worst is the Poltava at 1,000 meters, and the best is being the California and the Colorado with 640 meters. So. And lastly, we are clocking in with the concealment values of 13.4. Again, if you take the commander, you're getting it down to 12.1, which is freaking awesome in a battleship. And you're going to really you're going to make the most out of that and make a lot of use out of that. Because it's going to allow you to disengage and re-engage when you want to and control the engagement on your terms. Especially at ranges, a lot of cruiser players could theoretically forget about you, and when the second they start to turn broadside or angle slightly, that's when you can open up your guns, and that is when you can take advantage with your armor piercing. So, kind of a weird ship. And again, your detectability after firing main guns in smoke is 12 kilometers as well. So standardized detection, consider that same in smoke. So smoke is kind of neutered as well. So yeah, guys, that is basically the USS Florida in a nutshell. For me, she's a bit of a mixed bag. As a player who dabbles in her, plays battleships, considers himself a cruiser main, I would probably say this ship is more of a pass for me. I don't really think she's worth it. Again, if you're just looking for a Tier 7 battleship, you're a diehard American lover, for this independence that you think that she's worth it for a deal, you want to pick her up, by all means pick her up. I mean, I don't think you're going to have a horrendous time, but I think she's one of those ships that you have to understand her quirks and how she works to really get the most out of her, and then your fun factor in the ship will go up. But right out the gates, I don't think the ship is particularly worth it, and that's a bummer because I had high hopes for this ship. And I honestly find myself playing other ships other than the Florida. So, and I know a lot of other content creators are going to tell you, no, the Florida, it's sick, it's a good ship, it's worth, this ship is a lot of fun, blah, blah, and so and so. And you know what? That is great, especially when you are a super Unicum, 69, 70% win rate player, potentially like 65 solo, if that's what you want to say. But honestly, guys, I don't think it's worth it. I think you can have a lot more enjoyment with other battleships. They're going to be a lot more fun. So, anyways, enough of me blabbering on about the Florida in port. Let's see some examples of the Florida in combat. All right, guys, and here we are in battle with the USS Florida. Now, there are a couple things that I forgot to mention while doing the port analysis. This is become kind of a trend, isn't it now? I just have so much on my plate, so much I want to talk about. Sometimes I just space this shit. I really should write it down, but I kind of just spit my thoughts rather than coming like at it with a more of a plan, because I feel like it's just more natural than it is people that are just so scripted, right? So, anyways, the Florida as a ship is kind of along the lines or similar to ships such as like the Slava, the Champagne, the Borodino, ships that kind of emphasize more of the guns rather than like more of the guns in the battleship role rather than the whole like ability of battleships, from the tanking, from the damage dealing, from the pushing, that sort of stuff. This is more of a longer range sniper wannabe, and it gains that extra gun accuracy, so to speak, by throwing away armor. The ship does obviously, as you saw, it's not very well armored. The hull, being a North Carolina hull, is easily citadelable. Even when you think you're angled, you're really not. It's one of those ships that, especially when you're playing defense, angling, quote unquote, you're going to want to over angle at times because depending on the gun like shooting at you, penetration values, and our ranges, or the size of the guns, you're not angled. Trust me, I can almost guarantee it. Especially when you're trying to make use of that third turret, as you're going to see in the battle here. I actually do get citadeled from, I believe, at New Mexico because I am trying to utilize my third turret and I'm just not angled enough. So, some tips and tricks in the Florida that I can recommend right off the get-go. Passive. You want to play passive, you want to play further back, not too far back. It depends. If you're in a tier 9 game, so you're low tier, yeah, I can completely understand playing far back, probably at max range. So I'd never say that. But when you're top tier, you want to be medium range, around that, I would say 12 to 15, 16 kilometer range. Anything past 16 is just kind of a hit or miss. But yeah, you want to play around these ranges. It's just more comfortable. Now, remember what I said about the AP being extremely inconsistent. So here's a flat broadside Gokasuke, not really known for its armor. Pretty lightly armored, massive citadel, right? Yeah, 6 overpens. Waterline, I might add too. So because of that whole mechanic I was talking about, where if especially light cruisers and cruisers in general that are flat broadside to you, you will do nothing but overpens. And that comes into your shell penetration, your shell speed, your crup, your I guess angle, your shells are hit, like impact angle. All these stuff play a role. But now, as the Gokasuke is angled in or angled so ever so slightly, increasing its armor threshold, my AP can go right in and citadel the ship. I'm not making this stuff up, guys. I promise you this is legit, but there is very little data to back up what I'm saying. I'm just coming at it from a real player, real world perspective and what I'm seeing. I see a lot of Florida reviews out there where players are saying, this ship is fucking phenomenal. This ship is great. You should get this ship. This is a blast, blah, blah, and so and so. But they're failing to mention things like this that could really help you at least enjoy the Florida a little bit more and decide whether or not to pick her up. I have seen, especially this ship in general in particular, people that have spent full price for the ship, which is what, 30 or 40 US dollars if it's in the premium store, and regret their purchase. Flat out regret their purchase, and all it's doing now is collecting dust in their port. And that's kind of why I started this YouTube channel for not only my buddies and my clan, my good friends in this game as well, but for players like that feel like they've been misled a lot of the times. And I'm trying to look at it in a good perspective, because it very much frustrates me when players promote ships and don't really tell you how to play them, but just showcase 200,000 damage games and say, I've been having a lot of fun with this ship. Well, that's great. I'm glad you're enjoying it, but how about the rest of us that are trying to enjoy that ship and deciding whether or not to pick it up and if it's worth it? To me, recommending a premium ship, not only based upon price, but getting consistent games in her, consistently fun games, is worth the recommendation. I don't just recommend ships in this game because of oh, they should be good or because they're meta. That's retarded. I don't believe that. Now here's a good example of the high penetration on just a battleship. Like, I mean, again, I think the Florida excels at smashing broadside battleship and heavily armored ships just because of all the shell characteristics with armor piercing. And I do apologize, I don't think I shoot HE that much, even though I said in the port analysis about how HE is your main armament type, because that is 100% your main armament type in this. You probably want to be shooting HE in this thing, I would say 60-40, just because the HE is going to give you more consistent values, consistent results, I guess, than the armor piercing. Well, the armor piercing is really kind of a toss-up, guys. There's that example of that New Mexico citadeling me just because I'm trying to be greedy and utilize that third turret. So again, I'm not making this shit up. I'm telling you how it is, and I'm telling you have to use caution with this ship. And you should be positioning your ship in certain situations where you can utilize all 3 turrets, because that's 12 shells going down range. And for me, in my perspective, just shooting the 8 shells from the nose on does not land the results that the majority of players are looking for. But the second you angle, look at that again, 356s, which again, the New Mexico, watch my review on that thing. I fucking hate that ship too. It can still ricochet. The armor is still effective, especially if it hits that upper belt. But yeah, man, if you're not angling, in my opinion, over angling, you will just eat so many shells, and potentially citadels. So we're up to 50,000 damage. Pretty standard game. 2 kills on 2 cruisers. Not really sure what they were doing. I mean, they were in the balls deep in what the A cap there, um, doing full game returns. Not really sure why, but hey, you know what? As a battleship player on the opposing team, I'm not going to give advice in game because that A, you look like an ass, and B, fuck it, I love to see it. So, but for the rest of us, players that love cruisers, I can almost guarantee you, especially as a low tier cruiser, don't be doing that unless you just want to go off to the next battle, which again is scummy. Listen, I understand, I hate the double up tier 2, but at the end of the day, like, you've loaded into the battle, you should try to do something, rather than nothing and just throwing your ship away. It's kind of like the whole World of Tanks thing when players would just like drown themselves or something like that. And you would think that Wargaming would respond in a way like, you know what, I understand you're drowning yourself because of +2/-2 matchmaker. We're actually going to address that. But instead, no, they just turn your ship pink or your tank pink or whatever the hell it is and say, don't do that, X-nay. Yeah, like as if players are really going to give a fuck about that. So Wargaming is the king of giving warning after warning after warning and never actually following through with anything. So again, all frustrated at that point, because rules that aren't enforced are rules that are broken habitually. There you go. So anyways, going back to the Florida review, sorry to kind of get a little sidetracked there. That's kind of like what I do. I'm sorry. Just get thoughts in my head. I just go with it. Kiting. Kiting, I guess you can make use. Good kiting angles from the rear, especially like this. Kind of actually superior to that pushing inward. I don't think you're showing enough broad to reliably get citadel, unless you're going against like big caliber guns like 406s, which is the Colorado. But so the Colorado's more to ass, and I'm shooting the Leon. I should be fine, even though the Colorado can overmatch me. But even then, scoring citadels from this particular angle on the Florida is fairly hard at same tier battleships. Just throwing that out there. But yeah, I mean, as you can see, the AP, if it makes contact, because I'm shooting all 12 shells at the same time, can absolutely slap. And that's kind of what I'd recommend. You got to put yourself in favorable positions, positions that allow you to dictate the engagement, the way of engagement, because that's where, I mean, the majority of ships are going to succeed, but especially that in the Florida. So obviously I'm kited to the battleships, and I'm going to try to assist my Leander here against the Orion 44, which is actually a pretty damn good cruiser killer, but the Leander is no slouch himself. But I'm going to try to get a salvo off here right before he goes behind this mountain or rock formation or whatever, and I think we get all shells over, and then I'm going to see if what we land at. I think they're all over the place. Once again, the armor piercing and the dispersion values didn't align with what I was trying to do, so that's always great. And to top it all off, I got a Bayern sniping me, or attempting to snipe at 16 kilometers, which is always great to see. So, but yeah, it's the Florida, trying to go back to her so I don't get sidetracked too much. I think the big discussion here is, Floppy, do you recommend her? No, I don't. I'll just flat out say it. I don't recommend this ship, especially to players who want more of the typical battleship in this game. For a ship that is advertised as a sniping, more accurate battleship in this game, it's really not good at that. It's too hit or miss, very RNG dependent, which is, I guess, again, I've talked about this, a balancing feature within battleships in this game. But yeah, it just doesn't really do it incredibly well and consistently enough for me to justify recommending it to you guys. Is there fun to be had in the ship? Yes, there is. When you're top tier like I am now, you can absolutely slap. That's not a myth. That's a fact. But tier 7 in the state now, I think you're most likely going to be getting in tier 8 games. So again, if you're willing to get up tiered and you want a battleship that is lightly armored, stealthy, but doesn't have overmatch and is decently good at HE spamming, then yeah, this is your battleship for you. But other than that, I mean, again, more over pens. I can't recommend a ship that I know a lot of people are going to be frustrated at, because this is one of those ships for me. I consulted my buddy Jacques in this game, who is a big battleship player guy, and I use him as like the typical battleship player in this game, in regards of like, well, not like typical. That's kind of mean. He understands the game and follows up on it and is not bad. Actually, he's pretty good. So he, to me, resembles like the better than average battleship player in the game. Even he has been letting the Florida collect dust in his port now for about a year and a half, 2 years. I think he got in a Christmas crate and played it a couple times and was frustrated. I know he said once I make this video, he'll listen to what I say and try to utilize it, see if it makes use of it. And I'll let you guys know. I'll give you an update maybe on the next video what he says about the Florida. But last time he said, last time I played this thing, it was so incredibly frustrating. That I really didn't have a distinct role because the role of the ship is advertised as one thing and it's really not that. And that's, I think, a very valid description of the USS Florida. And I had high hopes for this ship too. I thought it was going to be pretty damn good. I thought it was going to slap. I liked that it was 356s. I guess it was a real concept design that the North Carolina, they were like considering. Instead, they went with the 406s on the North Carolina. So this was like if they decide to keep that 356 millimeter design with quad turrets, which would be kind of new, I think, for United States Navy. Not 100% sure. But yeah, we finally get it to utilize it in a pixel boat game. And yeah, again, don't take the results I'm getting as like this is what you're going to be expected to get every game. This is just, again, me playing 10, 11, 15 plus games in the Florida to try to find the optimal build, the optimal play style, so that I could produce a review for you guys. And hopefully the man or the lady that requested this in one of my previous videos, hopefully this is satisfying your needs with the Florida. I already have a West Virginia kind of like battle report earlier on my channel. If you want to find that, you can go ahead and check that out. But I'll get around to doing a full-scale review on that thing later on, like analysis. But right now, I'll just give you the Florida because I still have to finish my down the line series with the German BBs, which is incredibly interesting. So, but yeah, we get the Kraken Unleashed, which is nice with this final lucky salvo on a very angled in Asturias. But yeah, again, don't expect these results every game. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video and I will catch you all in the next one. All right, peace out and have a good one.